So if F1 is a story told in tense, where success is defined on the finest of margins, you guys tell me what's wrong with this picture. 2024 season, this is the rear suspension configurations of the current 10 teams. I'm going to read them out. Red Bull, pushrod. Mercedes, pushrod. McLaren, pushrod. Aston Martin, pushrod. Alpine, even, pushrod. Williams, pullrod. RB, pushrod. Sauber, pushrod. Haas, pushrod. Ferrari, pullrod. You guys tell me who's the odd one out in that equation and why? Again, 2026 new rules and regs, we're all well aware of this. So fine margins is going to become a principle based upon which success will be founded. We can't just bring a brand new chassis to each and every single Grand Prix now. This is stuff, these are landmark, benchmark changes that need to happen in the off season, right? Bring your biggest upgrades to the first Grand Prix and then iterate now. Bring your turn valves, your bloody little, your sprinkles of aerodynamic performance, your new rear wing, your new front wing beams, all that sort of shenanigans. And this is the founding principle why I was super worried when I heard that Ferrari hadn't changed. They hadn't converged upon Red Bull's pushrod rear suspension configuration. And again, Enrico Cardilli, their head aerodynamic buffing, had said words to this effect that they didn't feel like they needed to change, that they needed to converge upon Red Bull's rear suspension configuration just for the sake of it, that they were going to follow their own path. And I think that's admirable, absolutely, but not in the final years of a rule and reg set. Again, for the avoidance of doubt, where the margins are finest and each iteration will bring minimal gains. We've heard Christian Horner talk about their setup, their rear configurate, their suspension setup and its ills, that this is the law of diminishing returns now in 2024 and 2025. So why not sort that out at the outset, Ferrari? I am confused. Now Autosport are saying that Ferrari are going to change their mind. Enrico Cardilli was incorrect in his assertion. Indeed, there is gains from having that setup as such. Now, Adrian Newey, that's not to say that doesn't come with ills. Again, listen, you can't ride curbs. This is what Max Verstappen has been campaigning about for the longest time, not least at the Monaco Grand Prix. So stiff is the lateral portion of that setup as far as Red Bull are concerned, that Max Verstappen will spin out if he attacks a curb in the same way that Ferrari do or McLaren do. And they need to solve for that. There is no silver bullet. Again, this is all going to be iterative, absolutely. However, I say all this to say this. If you're talking about 80% of the Grand Prix circuits on the calendar, then this suspension that Adrian Newey has built and that configuration absolutely works. We've seen it over the last 2 years. God tier levels. And of course, that's built on the foundation of a malleable suspension. Ground effect era, you got to keep the suspension, the chassis even flat to the ground, as close to the ground, and therein lies the genius of the RB19 now. True or false? So why have Ferrari dropped the ball yet again on this in this law of diminishing returns era? But again, we hear, undigressed, let's go on, Jay. Autosport report that Ferrari are going to change for this. Already they're focused on the 2025 and 2026 cars, realizing now the error of their ways. Listen, if I'm in a test and I know my man over here is an absolute genius and he gets 100% of the marks each and every single time, he's answering different to me, then why would I not copy that answer? Rules of first principle here. I'm taking a step back. I don't know the answer to that. I genuinely don't know why Ferrari are one of the only teams on the grid still rocking pull rod rear suspension. It makes no sense to me. I am asking the question of what's going on, Johan. Autosport then report that the way that Ferrari is attacking improvements in changing as a team principle, Frederick Vasseur admitted that gains were much harder to realise. Yeah, no kidding, Sherlock. With the cost cap and current regulations, says Autosport, you have to manage both sides and will bring upgrades when we have found something to bring. Any decision to change suspension could also open a door for a change of driver's position too, which could improve weight distribution as the squad seeks to find gains in any area that it can. Why are we here now? Surely you've got to front load these decisions. As soon as I heard about their rear suspension configuration into 2024, there were questions that needed to be asked of Ferrari's decision making. And again, your boy Cameron F1 wasn't a million miles away, was he? Ferrari's potential move towards a more Red Bull style of front suspension comes as the teams continue its efforts to lure Adrian Newey on board to help provide input for its 2026 car once he's released from his current contract at the start of the year. Listen to me. Look, Adrian Newey will be looking at Ferrari like they are Neanderthals as far as their suspension setup. Here is the meta. We saw Checo Perez's Venturi tunnels, or we see them pretty much as near as makes no difference every Monaco Grand Prix where he stacks it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the meta. If you needed proof of that, you only need to look at the RB19's times and the fact that they won as near as makes no difference every single Grand Prix last year. Ergo, surely their suspension setup, the one that Red Bull is running, is the meta. That's the pole sitter. That's what's been getting the purple sectors. So why not copy that then, Ferrari, and bring that, the meta, as far as the rear suspension setup? Why not bring that to the start of 2024? I have no idea why they did not. Stubbornness? Maybe. Confidence in the path that they're already treading? Maybe. Technical arrogance? Potentially. Blind spots as far as the mechanical workings of rear suspension? Potentially. I don't know the answer to these questions, but what I do know is that in a time towards the end of this rule and reg set, every second counts. 1 kilogram accounts for 300ths of a second. You've heard Nico Rosberg in terms of his ability, what he had to do to get it done as versus Lewis Hamilton 2016. Sack off the paint off the helmet, save weight, gain time, stop training his leg muscles, don't do cycling, his exercise that he loved most, with a view to shed more muscle. And again, that yielded fruit at the Japanese Grand Prix where he out-qualified Lewis Hamilton to the tune of a couple hundredths of a second. Championships have and will always be won based upon hundredths. F1 is a story told in tenths. We are coming towards the end of the rule and reg set before we switch over paradigm shift settings in 2026. Ergo, law of diminishing returns is the foundation on which success will be gained or lost. Herein, Red Bull have the meta. Push rod rear, Ferrari. What are we doing? Converge upon that. You see the way that McLaren are catching Red Bull. Why would you go into a gunfight with one hand tied behind your back? This makes no sense, James. I have no idea, but they need to converge upon this. Every bit of advantage is important now. If they harbour aspirations to win a world championship, then surely don't go into a gunfight with one hand behind your back. Converge upon the meta, Ferrari, and they are doing the right thing. You know, I remember a story, if we're talking about incremental gains, the Sky Cycle team hired experts across the board to manage how the riders were washing their hands to ensure that they weren't infected. Again, when they were sick, they couldn't train. This was time lost. Hired sleep doctors to manage how they were sleeping. Worked as efficiently as possible. I am glad then, say all that to say this, I'm glad now that Ferrari have gotten on board with this incremental marginal gain thesis. I'll say again for the avoidance of doubt, Jay, Neil, Ferrari, I desperately want for Ferrari to be successful. They have forgotten hitherto the oldest axiom in all of Formula One, that championships are won and lost on very fine margins. Indeed, your success or failure could be dependent on hundreds, if not thousands, of a second. Chase incremental gains, then Ferrari converge upon the ostensible meta, surely, lest you be doomed to repeat the mistakes of recent Christmas past. Forza Ferrari, no more mistakes, no more unforced errors, converge upon the meta. Frederick Vasseur, do the right thing, chap. Do the right thing by Charles Leclerc, aka modern day Journalese. No further questions, Your Honour. But I digress.